This is Tim,
And Mulele.
and this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics, where we critique comics sent in by their creators. This is Tim with Mulele in Tokyo. How's it going?
All right.
It's getting a little hotter again today. It's been crazy hot in Tokyo. Fortunately, I missed some of it because I was in America and it wasn't so hot while I was there. But then it was a little cool for a few days, and now it's getting warm again. So
Yeah, actually, I found this trick where you simply just don't turn off your air conditioner. So I heard about this. Who told me about it? I can't remember exactly, but I heard about this, and I was like, no, that's bullshit. If I don't turn off my air conditioner, my bill will skyrocket. It was Nordico, translator for my comics. She was like, no. I left my air conditioner on for a month, and my bill was about 6,000 yen. It was maybe about $60. And it's actually much cheaper. And so I tried it for the first month, and my bill was 10,000 yen. My son and I also bought 2 fans to kind of circulate the air in the house. And it seemed kind of reasonable. So I just left it on. The only hassle is that because I don't turn it off, sometimes the air in the house gets a little weird. So I wind up like running the air conditioner with the window open sometimes, just a little bit.
So, I mean, does it end up using less electricity because you don't turn it off and on?
Exactly.
Yeah, because I would imagine turning it on, there's a burst of electricity usage there.
Yeah. I'm guessing that it doesn't take as much energy to turn it off, but apparently most of the cost is in the turning it off and on constantly. Huh. So even if you're out of the house, you just leave it on, and you save energy, and but of course my girlfriend, she was like, but you'll break your machine if you use it that way. But for me in particular, because I live in government housing, the government pays for the machine itself, and if it breaks, I just say, hey, it's broken, and they replace it. As long as it doesn't break on the hottest day of the year, I'm good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but anyway, maybe try it. I mean, it's weird, and yeah, I was sweating just a little bit in the beginning because I wasn't sure if my bill would come back like $400 or $500, but no, it came back $100. And my place isn't huge, but it cost me about, I'd say about 5,000 yen less than my mother's place. Her place is a little bit bigger than mine, but she's still got just the one air conditioner. So,
maybe we should mention for American listeners that nobody lives in a place with central air conditioning or heating in Japan. That's just how it is. So we're talking about like room air conditioners here.
Yeah. They're single units, usually placed in one room, and usually cover a like 20-foot by 20-foot area. But yeah, I've got one unit in my house. My mother's got one in her house. Most people have one, at least one, and some people who are high society rich people might have 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're doing a couple comics this time because the queue has gotten kind of long. The first one is called The Incapable Trump. written by Omar, Mirza, artist Alex Genaro, cover art Armando M. Zonker. As you would probably guess from the title, this is an anti-Trump comic where Trump becomes the Hulk. Now, I really like the look of it. It's drawn, like the covers particularly are drawn as, modeled on the early Hulk covers by Jack Kirby, and they're really well done. And the comic itself looks really good. Now the story, it inserts a lot of like real life things that happened like really early in Trump's presidency. It starts like just as he's becoming president. And then like something angers him, and then he becomes Hulk-like, and he's bouncing around Washington. And in the first issue, he tears up the actual Constitution. I think that this comic, what do I want to say? It's very unsubtle about its attitude towards Trump. And when the Trump tears up the Constitution, then we have a lot of like recognizable likenesses of actual Democratic politicians who are all reciting the preamble of the Constitution, and it weakens the Trump, and he turns back into normal Donald. And I don't know, it just seemed a little much to me.
Much.
Well, a little eye-rolly, like, really? You're going to go this way? I mean, there's plenty of commentary you can make about Trump, although at this point I think it's a little hard to not say something that's been said 1,000 times already. Yeah. But, yeah, I don't know. It kind of... I can't quite find the word that I'm looking for, but it was just kind of over the top, and it's kind of we will overcome feeling. Also, I was going to check and I forgot, like, it's a different issue, but what are the rules about putting likenesses of actual people in your comic? Because we have not only the Democratic politicians, but Republican politicians and personalities from The Daily Show. And I wasn't sure if that was okay. I mean, especially using their real names. It's not like somebody who happens to look like Trevor Noah, but he's actually like Never Troa or something. It's actually, they're calling him Trevor. I don't know. Do you know anything about that angle?
As far as I understand it, the rules are, for the purpose of satire, you can use products and characters from other properties, somewhat. Of course, if you use the mouse will sue the pants off you. But if they're public figures, you can in fact use them freely. Like satire cartoons are always doing that. Political cartoons.
Yeah.
But there are some. Actually, I don't know. Like Trevor Noah, he's a news commentator / comedian. I don't know. I don't watch him, but I think his likeness is usable to a certain extent. I don't know. It depends on if there's branding for that, and they don't want you to use the branding. I don't know the rules exactly. But what I understand is that for the purpose of satire generally, you can get away with a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so what did you think of this comic overall?
Did not like it.
No, why?
Okay, so I should say the artwork is actually fine. The likenesses are good. The
Yeah.
overall style of like classic Hulk, Gray Hulk, drawing, and there's a lot of Kirby-esque stuff to it as well. That was all fine. Sometimes the coloring is just a little bit simplified, but the colorist also did the job. Although I'm a little disappointed that the when Trump becomes the Trump, he doesn't change colors.
Yeah.
I think there's kind of a missed opportunity for some commentary on racism and on just, I don't know, he becomes redder or something.
Well, yeah, I think that was stated in the dialogue that he turned orange, but he didn't look that orange.
Yeah, orange is a hard one to do though, especially when you're doing Caucasian flesh tones. Upping the orange looks like a color misprint.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now, and if you're looking for it, you can see that the Trump is more orange than Donald. But yeah, if you're not looking for it, it's kind of hard to tell the difference.
Yeah. So the problems that I had with it is that the other day I was describing a story that I'm working on. Takes place in a future America, future dystopian America. I was describing this to Oscar, and Oscar just very quickly said, "Oh, you mean like now?" And so, yeah, this is the dystopia that people have been talking about for decades. And when you have ICE walking into buses and asking for papers, it's very reminiscent of Nazis back in the day. When you have deportation of legal immigrants, again, it's very much like the Jews being pushed out of Germany. When you have travel bans and the level of sanctioned racism in the country that you have now, we're in a fascist state. This is not a path to something. This is the end game of fascism. We're now looking at Trump. I think the other day said he wanted to use a private military to do Afghanistan, which kind of smacks of switching over to privatized military. And with all of these things, the playfulness and the lighthearted gags and the on-the-nose stuff about America and overcoming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and portraying Trump as more like just kind of a child. In the first scene you see him, he's like playing with blocks, and it just seemed like, it's a little more serious than this.
The truth of the matter is that the truth of it is just too painful for me to enjoy the comic.
Yeah.
We're at a point where the country is beginning to disintegrate. I'm sorry to sound kind of hyperbolic, but this is the way I see it. I was planning to go to America next month, actually, but that canceled. Do I want to bring my half Japanese, half black child to America, to Trump's America, especially with all the police shootings and shit, when he can barely speak English, and he's about 100 and 190 centimeters. 190 centimeters tall. 100, no, he's 2 meters now. So what is that?
It's over 6 feet, well over 6 feet.
I'm 6'1" and I'm 184 centimeters, but he's like what 6'6", 6'7". So I'm gonna bring that teenager to America when he looks like a black kid who would have a problem with the police. No, I don't want it. And I should say though that to be fair, this is not entirely Trump.
Right. I mean, that problem you're talking about, way predates Trump.
Yeah. And if we're talking specifically about Black Lives Matter, that actually came up under Obama.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that you have to remind people that Black lives do matter under the tenure of a black president, there's a problem. Yeah, we've been on this road for a while, but this shit they're not even pretending anymore. It's overt, and it's really, really painful to watch on the news. But to see a comic that kind of, I don't know if it makes light of it so much as it doesn't. There's nothing you can do. Nothing you can do in a comic that has comedy in it that accurately portrays the amount of suffering that people are going through in the country now. So in that sense, no, I'm just not about this comic. I can't. And the idea of holding up the Constitution and we'll overcome, that's not going to work. And yeah, the idea that he tore up the Constitution in the first issue, that was all right. A bit on the nose, but
mm-hmm. Yeah, as much of this comic is.
Yeah, and the idea that he gets mad when he's embarrassed, but then he turns into the Hulk, but actually,
yeah. And I said Trump gets embarrassed.
Yeah, and then he's kind of shamed back into submission.
Yeah, it doesn't check out.
Yeah, not really. No. So I would say if you really want to do something like this, that's kind of a tall order considering how over the top he is. You can't over the top the president because the shit's so ridiculous. But at the same time, what he's actually doing is so incredibly dangerous and painful that making light of it is really not going to help. But saying it straight is a little tedious. I think that approaching a comic like this is incredibly hard. And it's not to say that these creators lack talent in any sense, but just it's not a comic that really needs to be made or can be made easily.
By the way, we should mention that this is available as an iPhone app.
I did want to comment about that.
Yeah, so we were able to download it. It has the first 2 issues in it. It works similar to Comixology with the guided view and everything, although the guided view wasn't done quite as well as Comixology does it. There were some places where I expected that if I swiped, it would zoom into a text box, but it just went on to the next page.
Yeah.
So it was a little hard to read some parts of it, but it worked pretty well.
I generally didn't like that app. I'd rather just read a straight PDF. I don't use Comixology, and so I'm not used to that, but it just seemed a little extra. Yeah.
Okay. Second comic is called Empress. So this was sent to us by Brian Barr, who we've heard from before. And he actually sent us the first 2 volumes, which include 4 issues each, and plus issues 9 and 10. I got the whole first volume read, and while I was waiting for Mulele to come on Skype, I started the second volume. How far did you get?
33 pages.
Okay. So this was co-created by Brian Barr and Chuck Amadori. They both worked on a series called Pale Dark that we talked about quite a while back. It was 2013. It's written by Chuck Amadori, art by Marcelo Salaza, colors by Matheus Bronca. So I went way past our usual, we'll read at least 30 pages, but I guess you didn't go much beyond that.
No, part of it was a problem of time. It's not that I didn't want to read more, but I just didn't have the time to get there.
Okay.
But I do want to ask a little bit. In the previous review, what did we say? How did we? Was it generally positive or negative or?
Well, I didn't go back and listen to it, but I could tell from the blurb that I wrote on, and in the show notes that we had a problem with that one because it was the kind of story where the author isn't giving us enough information.
Okay.
And that was not a problem I had with this one. So that's good news. Now, just a little bit of what it's about. So it starts out there's an actress named Zia who is missing, and the producer hires a detective named Niles Lance to look for her, and sends a woman named Rose along with him. And of course, you wonder, I wonder if they're going to sleep together. And they do, of course. Now, I found that, by the way, that Hollywood angle I thought was kind of interesting because this is set at just the beginning of talkies. And some people are dismissing movies with sound as a fad.
Yeah.
As tends to happen. And I thought there was an interesting line there, which I imagine is based on actual documented comments from the time, that having to set the blocking of scenes so that people will be near the mic would mess things up. But I guess the answer was just use more mics. But at the time, maybe people didn't think that way. Anyway, so they find Zia's diary, and then we see in flashbacks that her mother saw these kind of green goblin-type guys calling to her and, join us. And eventually her mother committed suicide, and then the green men started to call to Zia instead. And then we get into this whole thing that, it goes back a millennium to Viking times and some woman back then. And yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like he was holding back too much information, but I also kind of didn't feel like he was holding back any information, and I didn't feel like there was any compelling reason to keep moving other than that it would make me more informed for this review. I just sort of felt like we were seeing the same story sort of repeated through generations. I mean, the whole flashback thing, it told me that it started in Viking times, but I didn't feel like it was giving me any more information than that, or that there was anything more for me to find out by reading further. Also, I didn't feel like I really had a dog in the fight. I mean, who is the character I'm supposed to identify with here? Especially since, spoiler alert, the character who I thought was the hero of the piece gets killed at the end of Volume 1. And then I was like, okay, well, what am I hitching my wagon to here? it just felt like I was sort of wandering through the comic aimlessly, uh, and nothing was really pulling me forward. So, what was your take on 30 pages of it?
Um, well, I didn't get to all of that, the Vikings and the whatnot, and I only dealt with the flashback to the actress who was
What, to Zia's mother?
n- is that Zia's mother?
Okay, I guess it's Zia's mother who is in the talkies era, and maybe Zia is more modern times. I got a little lost there, maybe, but yeah, I think that's Zia's mother you're talking about.
If that's Zia's mother, then that's even more confusing because they're looking for Zia, right?
Yeah, and then when they find her diary, then I think it brings up that her mother had some kind of problem too.
Get that far. So basically, the detective is paired with the agent from the studio, and they've got a kind of Sculder and Mully type situation.
Mulder and Scully.
Well, it's like
yeah, not Sculder and Mully, but Mulder and Scully.
It's what it's supposed to be, but it's not quite.
I see what you're saying. Okay,
Yeah.
like Never Troa. Okay.
Yeah, but then we flash back to 2 years earlier, where they're on a cruise ship. Yeah. See, the thing about this is that the story, the scope of the story is too large, and the care for each individual scene is not quite there. So you kind of have just not enough information before it moves on to the next scene. And I found the jumping in between timelines, jumping around in time the way they did, really didn't help. So the 2 years earlier bit I missed, and some of the characters look kind of samey to me, so it was hard to differentiate situations. Also, it could be that I was still a little bit sleepy when I read this, because I read it this morning, but it was hard to focus on what exactly the plot was.
Yes.
And I came to a point where suddenly there are these aliens or these creatures in the background on this movie set. And I was like, oh, you mean this isn't a straight mystery? and I don't know, maybe I didn't look at the front cover, and so I didn't realize, but
yeah, there they are, the green guys.
Yeah, they kind of look like goblins. But the first green guy appears on page 18 of this book, or of this PDF, I should say. And that's a little deep into it, to introduce that. It's kind of like if the first 10 minutes of Indiana Jones were actually a drama without any adventure, without any action, without introducing Belloc or Indy as protagonists, as antagonistic forces. So it kind of felt disjointed. Also, I got to say, for the composition of the shots of the panels, sometimes they work quite well, especially in the first couple of pages. But sometimes there's some really, really weird composition here. A couple of scenes where there's a guy in the foreground pointing at a lady in the background, but his finger rests on her breast. It's a tangent. And in comic lingo, but I saw that and I just thought, man, that's just bad. You just wouldn't do that in for any reason. It's weird. It's uncomfortable in its setup, and also there's some times where there's a lot of space on the page, but nothing is happening, and there is no dialogue or very little dialogue. There are also some weird jump cuts. For example, they're on the boat. It's like the guy says, actually, I'm a little dizzy. Then the woman says, then I suppose you wouldn't want company. They kiss, and then next scene, he's on the bed alone, sleeping. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah, with all his clothes on. So I thought, well, did they sleep together, or did he just get drunk and fall asleep? It was unclear.
Yeah. And then he notices that his room's been ransacked. Was it ransacked with him in the room or before he got there and he just didn't notice? Because then the woman comes in and says her room was ransacked as well. So a lot of stuff here just doesn't quite jive. It's missing pieces. And I think I don't remember specifically, but I think if we had a criticism of not enough information in the last project, I think that still holds true here, at least scene to scene. You can have a one-scene story that has a lot of that has not so many elements to it that will be very intriguing if you give us all the information.
Well, I think maybe it's not enough information, but in a different way. It's not like, what are you not telling us? You're keeping too many secrets from him. It's not that kind of feeling. It's more like, that's odd. I don't quite get what that was supposed to be.
Yeah, the point of each scene seems to be just a little bit off. Mm-hmm. Like it's missing some of the. I don't want to sound negative here, but it's missing some of the cliches of storytelling. And what I mean by cliche in this point is not something that's overused, but something that is a standard of the medium, of the genre. I'm
kind of basic structural type of things.
Yeah, structure, story cues, those sorts of things are kind of missing here, and it kind of feels like he knows some of them, but doesn't know them well enough to use them succinctly. So there's always a feeling of something's off. And wait a minute, what happened here? And I kind of felt that scene to scene as I was going through. Yeah, some of the artwork is quite nice. Some of it works quite well, but some of it is just weirdly off. And it's one of those things that, oh dear, what happened here? Kind of things. And also the way the artist draws women sometimes is a little crazy with the fashion and the breasts.
Well, yeah, I mean, for one, it feels really photo referenced.
Yeah,
because there's that stiffness to a lot of the figures, but also like the women especially seem sort of distorted to amp up the sexiness. Yeah. And it just starts to look kind of weird. These breasts just kind of sticking out sort of unnaturally, or butts sometimes do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we get it. They're sexy.
Mind you, it's not Richard Corbin big, but you know, it's still kind of like, pow, when I think of the time that wasn't quite. I think it was before breast augmentation surgery. But oh, by the way, the panel I was talking about is on page 12. In the middle of the page, it's actually the guy's handing something to her. It looks like
right. Yeah, that did weird me out too. At first, I couldn't recognize the paper in his hand. It looked like he was like pulling her dress down or something.
Yeah, it was a bit weird. Also, the shadow on her face, the shadow line, the colorist kind of ignored it, so it looks like a scar.
Hmm.
So there's some problems here between the colorist and the line artist, and also the composition of that shot is terrible, with an obvious kind of um, dividend to its terribleness.
By the way, about the setting here, yeah. So the main story is taking place at the beginning of the talkies.
Yeah,
The mother, I don't think the mother was an actress. We don't really see much about her career wise. It let's see where what page was that? It jumps to 30 years ago on at the bottom of page 27 of the PDF.
right.
So those last few pages that you read were 30 years earlier with her
Yeah,
mom.
yeah, yeah. And that was right about the time where I was like, I need to make coffee. Um, yeah. But I mean, for me, it was very convoluted, and actually, I thought that the mother was the actress, and then I was looking at chipped tooth in one panel. I was like, "What? She's kind of ugly for an actress." Um, but yeah, now that you say it, okay, that makes a little more sense. But I don't know. I missed some of the cues as well, which is
Hmm.
maybe my fault here, but it's kind of it's kind of hard to read as a comic. Um, but I mean, I have to say, there's a lot of effort that went into this. So I can't knock that. They did work very hard. You can see it on the page, but there's still some structural flaws from both art and story points
Hmm.
standpoints.
Yeah. And you referred to this before, but yeah, it seems like a lot of the women look the same. I mean, not only the mother and the daughter, but Rose also, who is the associate of the studio head and following the detective around. She's also got red hair
Mm,
that, comes down to, like her chin level or something. And
yeah.
so that made it a little confusing. There wasn't much variation among the women.
Yeah, yeah. I think the photo reference is not helping the artist because it's
Hmm.
throwing his composition off. Because if he's like, I can't do this composition because the model doesn't set right in the framing, um, because I'm using a photo that doesn't have that framing, then I think you got a problem. Um, and it kind of shows.
Yeah, well, and it's also kind of obvious when the photo reference is like either maybe fashion magazine or maybe porn. I'm not sure. I mean, there's a shot. Where was it now? It's showing like Zia making a movie, and she's here it is. It's on page 11. Her pose there just looks like, I don't know. It's like she like really cheesecakey.
Yeah, bottom panel.
And it doesn't yes, it doesn't look natural.
Mm,
It looks really posed.
mm. Well, I mean, it is a shot from a movie, right? That's the idea of it.
Right. But it also looks a little bit, I mean, if this is the era, it looks little bit too modern.
Yeah, well, there is kind of a weirdness to the fact that you've got modern coloring and modern fashion for like,
Talkies came in what, like late 20s, early 30s?
yeah. So I would expect suits from that time because none of the suits that the men wear look like suits from the era. Although some of the women's fashion does kind of look flapperish, but not really. Because, like, if you look at page 10,
Hmm.
um, Sorry, what era is that supposed to be?
Well, I mean, yeah, this is supposed to be that late 20s, early 30s.
Okay, but she's wearing like stretch pants.
Yeah, she's wearing slacks.
Yeah, and what, some kind of t-shirt? And he's
Slacks, or maybe they're yoga pants. I'm not sure.
yeah, they kind of look like yoga pants.
But
And
yeah, you'd expect her to be wearing a dress if it's that era,
yeah, and he's wearing a Clark Kent suit, and
and no fedora.
yeah, but I see his suit is kind of modern, and her outfit is also modern. So I'm supposed to believe that this takes place in the 30s or 20s.
Hmm.
And also the coloring is such that it doesn't have a kind of classic feeling. There are some bits where there is a bit hazy here and there, and that helps a little bit, but not quite enough. It's not. It doesn't quite exemplify the 30s.
Hmm.
I would expect something a little bit more. I mean, there's some scenes that are sepia toned, which kind of help,
Yeah.
but a lot of scenes that are not, and that kind of doesn't help. Um, so overall, it was kind of hard to follow the story, and especially if you're jumping back and forth between timelines, you've got to keep the fashion straight, or at least set really hard cues as to what time they're in.
Yeah, maybe it would have been good to have like different color palettes for each era.
Possibly. I mean,
I've seen that done before.
yeah, that's kind of a basic one. But it seems that they tried some other ways. Now, the Viking era that I never got to. Um,
Yeah, that comes quite a bit later in Volume One.
okay, I think I'm there. Um, yeah, again, same color palette, except everybody's really really dark. In fact, it's hard to kind of read the action. It's so dark. Yeah, artistically, it's just kind of weird. And sorry to say it that way, but it's made some really odd choices. The artists have made some really odd choices in how they're going to present each era.
Yeah, like if you look at page 74, um, yeah, the light situation is a little odd here because it looks like the surroundings are lighter than the characters.
Yeah, yeah, there is that. But I mean, this kind of dark shadows, I think, were augmented by the colorist. And when it comes to the night scene, it gets really dark.
Mm-hmm.
So in page 76, it's getting harder and harder to read. And by the time you get to page 77, there's some far shots. You're like, you have to be very aware of the situation. You won't just get it. You'll have to search for it.
Right, that first panel, I can't really understand what's happening.
Yeah, and so that's a problem. And you know, there are comics that take place at night, which would serve as cues. Also, there's some naked people who come up later.
Mm-hmm.
If this is supposed to be a kid-friendly comic, they shouldn't be naked. And if it's not a kid-friendly comic, just fucking show them naked. Don't.
I don't think it's supposed to be kid friendly. There's some violence and blood in here too, decapitation near the end, and
Well, you know how America is. You know, violence.
yeah,
Is great.
blood is okay. Sex, no.
Their minds. Yeah. See, that thing with Janet Jackson years ago would have been fine if she had died. If like Justin Timberlake had ripped her heart out and showed it to the audience, it would be, oh, that's cool, totally cool. But show a breast, man. Janet Jackson can't show her face for 10 years.
Yeah.
But still, yeah. Oh fuck, man. This is gonna stop a pregnant woman to take the the baby out.
Uh-huh.
That's some shit, but can't show anybody naked. There's some scenes later where there's this naked guy walking around.
Yeah, he's just their guide. I didn't really understand why he's naked, because he's a native, but I mean, not wearing anything at all.
Yeah, that's a bit rough. And this is kind of, it's kind of weird. And to be honest, weird choices all around. So yeah, I really don't know about the story here because I only read 33 pages, but art-wise, a lot of weird stuff. If you're a fan of the art or the artist or the writer, then you'll probably enjoy it. For me, didn't quite.
Social media. Sometimes we forget to do this. What's your social media?
Okay, on Twitter I'm at Mulele Redux, and online I'm mulele.com. Although I should say I haven't updated my website in a while, and I'm actually beginning to kind of wonder about the relevance of having a website. It's kind of a, I mean, for you, it's an archive, right? You're archiving all the episodes that we do, and that is a very necessary place. For me, it's kind of a landing page with no new information and a store. The store is the only relevant part of my website at this point because I haven't really updated my website in a couple of years.
Yeah, well, I mean, listening to Comic Lab with Dave Kellett and Brad Geiger, I mean, they've been talking about how, 10 years ago, they would say you got to drive people to your website because you're selling ad space on your website, and that's how you make money. But now with social media, they've completely thrown that advice out. Social media is where you're going to reach people, and you're making money from maybe Patreon. The importance of a website for an artist is considerably less than it was.
Yeah, and I don't really keep a portfolio online. So as a portfolio site, it's not much. As a store, that's where you can get my stuff. The only reason why I have a store is so I don't have to pay money to some other place so I can have a store. But the cost of my website is actually higher than the cost of a store would be. So I'm kind of wondering about that decision. I like having mulele.com, but at the same time, especially because I had to wait a year to get it, because someone had it. It was an Italian website before it was mine. I don't know what that was about, but
Mulele.
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't anything that I could quite understand, but they had it.
Well, maybe you could get set up a store and use your domain. I mean, imagine that would be a possibility, and then just not have the site.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll just shut it down and park on the site until I figure out what I want to do with a cheaper service.
Yeah.
But anyway, Twitter is at Mulele Redux. Facebook is at Mulele Redux. I'm not really on Facebook these days, and I'm slowly pulling out of it. I check occasionally for birthday reminders, but that's about all it's good for me because, fuck Zuck. And on Instagram, I'm Mulele Redux. And I think that's about all I'm doing on social media right now.
Okay. I'm at Decon Comics on Twitter. I've been spending a tiny bit more time on Twitter than before. Generally, in the past, it's just been like put up something about the new episode and move on till next week. But I have been doing a little bit more there. I'm more on Facebook, mainly catching up with friends there. And we have both a page and a group there, and that's all linked from our site, deconstructingcomics.com. I used to do Tumblr, and I would get some response, and then for a long time I didn't get any response at all, so I gave it up.
Mm.
I don't know what happened to Tumblr, but at least for me, it ceased to draw any attention.
Yeah, I haven't posted there in about a year or so, and I get new follows about every week though. But apparently only porn follows. So I don't know. Maybe that's just happens to be what I'm looking at on Tumblr. So that's what they send me. Who knows? But anyway, yeah, Tumblr's not a thing. It hasn't been for a while. And I think when you stopped getting engagement, then that's around the time that it dropped off.
Yeah.
But I mean, these the number of networks and channels are kind of converging, and soon we'll only have one or two. Because right now I've got two, and it doesn't include my own website. So,
yeah, it's kind of following the same pattern that like long distance phone companies did after the AT&T breakup.
Yeah,
where there were a million carriers for a while, and then they all gradually either died or merged.
Yeah, I think
so,
around that time I was in Los Angeles on vacation, and I tried to make a call to the next town, and they were all like 75 cents a minute. It was crazy, but yeah.
Okay, so we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Till next time, this is Tim.
Wait, a couple of weeks? Man, that's a long time.
Oh, and I forgot to say my usual line. If you'd like us to critique your comics, send a PDF or a link to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We'll read at least 30 pages of it and critique it on the show. Well, this is always a bi-weekly show, mixed in with Deconstructing Comics.
Wait a minute, man. Why am I just hearing about this now? Even though we only record every once in a while, I thought we were doing it like every week.
How does that work? Yeah, we'll sit down and record one episode, and that'll be every episode for a month. No.
Yeah. By the way, you say we'll read at least 30 pages.
Yeah.
Just to say, send us your best 30 pages. But it seems that people constantly ignore that and send in, because like looking at the PDF, volume 1 and volume 2, so that's like 200 pages.
Well, I get the impression that 90% of the people who send us comics have never listened and will never listen to our show.
Yeah,
they know that we will critique comics. Maybe they'll listen to the episode where we talk about theirs, but
yeah.
But then I have some people who write in and say, "Have you critiqued the comic yet?" Well, aren't you listening to the show?
Yeah. Well, anyway, best 30 pages, whatever. I mean, we'll guarantee 30 pages. Tim often reads more. I often read just enough. But yeah, like for today's podcast, the second book, Empress, the first 30 pages, I don't know if they're the best 30 pages, but they were the only 30 pages that I read.
Yeah, I don't know. The problem with best 30 pages, though, I think, is that if it's an ongoing comic, we kind of get dropped into the middle of something if they think their best 30 pages are in issue 10.
Well, there are a lot of points there, and I suppose if the story is that important, then yeah. I think at the time we were saying best 30 pages, we were looking at kind of online daily comics.
Yeah, we were looking at a lot of web comics before.
Yeah, but maybe you're right. Maybe just, okay, send us whatever, and we'll read 30 pages. But it just kind of feels a little random. And if they send 200 pages and I only read the first 30, is that what they wanted me to read? I don't know.
Well, we can hash this out some more off mic, maybe.
Okay. Anyway.
Okay. So, till next time, this is Tim.
And Mulele.
And thanks for listening to Critiquing Comics.